All right. Hey everyone, it's Susan Jenkins here with Better Homes and Gardens, and I have Toby with Move and Mortgage.
Hi guys.
Hey, we're going to talk about the HUD process, and I want to talk about three topics. One is the $100 down program with HUD Homes, the 203B with escrow, and the 203K. So let's start off first with the $100 down program.
Sure.
Tell us, what is that?
It's as simple as it sounds. It's literally a down payment of $100.
Instead of 3.5%.
Instead of 3.5%, it's $100.
But however, it has to be a HUD home, and the buyer has to be FHA loan.
Right.
Right. Is there anything special that has to come along with that? I know from my point of view, we send a HUD addendum. When they execute the contract, we actually download it, and then it's part of the contract, the $100 down addendum, which can be downloaded off the HUD home store under
Right.
addendums.
That's the major thing, is identifying that it is a property that qualifies for the $100 down. Otherwise, it's just an FHA loan where the down payment is $100 as opposed to 3.5%.
But they're still responsible for the EMD, home inspection, and appraisal.
Right.
And of course, your closing costs if
Right.
HUD, if you haven't requested them when you've submitted the bid
Right.
for the closing costs. So phenomenal program. Any home that's available in the HUD home store. What if it's coded IE, which means insurable with escrows, or UI? Would that still qualify for the $100 down program?
I believe it does. The escrow would be something that would be handled separately, and the down payment would still be just $100.
Okay, let's talk about that. We said the word escrow.
We did.
So, and I have some people like, oh, so that's a gift, right? From HUD. Or when will HUD give me that money? And it's not a gift from HUD.
Correct.
How does that work? So when you go to the HUD home store, they have properties coded IN, which just means insurable. So that's just going to be your straight FHA 203B. And a lot of people get confused, and FHA is a 203B, right?
Correct. Just your normal FHA
That's the terminology.
loan. The
that's used.
terminology is the 203B.
But if it's coded IE, that means insurable with escrow. And the appraiser has stated repairs are needed that are below $10,000. It used to be $5,000, they bumped it up to $10,000 now. And you can actually download the addendum off the HUD home store, and it lists what the appraiser has noted. Now, it doesn't give a line item for the amount, but it just says it's going to cost under $10,000 for these repairs.
Right.
So it's coded IE, and that's where the 203B with escrow comes in.
Right.
So talk about what is the process of the 203B with escrow.
Sure. So we have to get a contractor's bid for the items that are noted on the HUD appraisal.
Okay.
Or the
So a second appraisal comes. First, so everyone knows a HUD property has an FHA appraisal done onto it. The moment it's assigned to the asset manager, they task an appraiser. However, they no longer share it with us. They used to back in the day.
They did.
But it's not shared. That's used to determine both the coding, IN, IE, or UI, and also the list price.
Right.
So that appraisal's there, but it's not going to convey. It just sits there.
Right.
It doesn't stick to that case number.
Correct.
A new FHA buyer comes. They then submit the bid. The bid's awarded. We're under contract with a 203B with escrows.
Right.
So what's going to happen now?
So we're going to get our contractor's bid, and that's going to give us our dollar amount for what the repairs are going to cost.
Do we need two bids for the contractor?
Typically just one.
Just one, okay.
And if it were the 203K, that's where multiple bids might come into play. But for the escrow, because of the dollar amount, we only have to get one.
Even if it's under just $10,000. Now we have different contract licenses: Contract A, Contract B, and Contract C. Now your C is normally capped at $10,000, and they can't stack the bids, so the max they can do is $10,000, which is fine with a 203B with escrow, and then your Class B and your Class A.
Right.
Do you have any preference over the class of the contractor who's submitting the bids with the 203B?
I like security, so I tell everybody if you can get a Class A, we know we won't have any issues.
Yeah, because they're way over the 150 bidding over, and then they have a lot of bonding.
Right, but technically we don't care as long as the license covers the amount of work to be done.
And also the specialty. So if we're doing electric, plumbing, HVAC, gas fitting, it has to be a Class C that has the specialty designations as well.
Right.
It can't just be home improvement.
Right.
It has to go specially to those specialization.
Yep.
So we get a bid from the contractor. Is that something the buyer and the buyer's agent, are you involved in that as the lender?
No, we try to stay away from recommending any contractors or anything
Smart.
like that. Right.
Okay.
So we would rely on the home buyer to make sure that they find a contractor they're comfortable with to provide the bid.
Okay. So let's go through the process. The bid is submitted.
Yep.
The bid is awarded. We execute the contracts. People have 15 days within that time period of ratification for their home inspection and their appraisal. So the home inspection is done first, termite moisture, and that's actually done by HUD because it's an FHA buyer. So HUD will order the termite and the moisture. They will pay for treatments but not repairs. So if there's any crawl space repairs that need to be done, would that still qualify under the 203B or would it go to a 203K?
That's a good question. So
Okay.
when you start veering into structural repairs, that's when it turns into a 203K.
So if someone says, okay, you just need a sister two joist, is that structural or is that still?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
What determines structural?
The joists themselves
Okay.
are based off my limited understanding of
Okay.
construction. You'd fall through the floor, right? Your
Okay.
floor wouldn't be secure, the structure wouldn't be sound, so that would be considered structural.
Even if it's still under 10,000, it would still have to go to a 203K.
Right.
Okay, we'll come back to that.
Yes.
So we're in the 203B, we get the repairs estimates from the
Right.
contractors. What's the process from there? So the home inspector comes out. All HUD homes are sold as is. HUD's not going to make any repairs onto it. So that's just the determination with the buyer if they want to move forward with the contract.
Right.
So they want to move forward, then they order the appraisal, that goes to you. You order it, the appraisal comes back, and then we look at the section that's called conditions or lender require repairs.
Right.
So talk about that.
Yep. So once we get the appraisal, that will tell us, per the appraiser, what needs to be done for the property to meet HUD's guidelines.
Okay.
And then that is what we would say, okay, based off of these repairs, this is what we need a bid for from a contractor.
Okay. So if we simplify it, home inspection's completed, appraiser comes out, he notes repair, peeling paint, broken window, drywall damage, and soffit
Sure.
on there. So let's say we then get a contractor, a bid comes in, and the bid is $3,500. What occurs from there?
So then we take the bid, and the repairs are actually financed into the loan.
So if the bid is $100,000, wouldn't that be great if we can get a house for $100,000? Just for simple, we're not bidding $100,000 and then putting the $3,500, but the loan on the back end, the $3,500 will come on as a loan.
Right.
So it just increases the loan.
Correct.
And if they did a $100 down payment, so it's only a $100 down,
Right.
and then they're financing the rest.
Correct.
Okay, and then they have to bring closing cost if they didn't include that.
Right.
Okay.
And the only thing that we mentioned is peeling paint. So
Okay.
we mentioned peeling paint. Peeling paint's a
You're like, your eyes got big.
Yes. Peeling paint, depending on the year the property was built, isn't a big deal, or it is a big deal.
Now, it's interesting, if it's built prior to 1978, FHA buyer on a HUD property, HUD will actually order the lead-based paint abatement. The inspector will go out there, they will determine if abatement is needed or stabilization is needed.
Right.
HUD will finance up to $4,000 on their own. They'll pay for $4,000.
Right.
If it goes over $4,000, they will allow the buyer either to cancel the contract and refund the EMD or switch over to 203K.
Right.
And then that difference of the 4,000 and whatever's above can be financed in.
Correct. And that's the only time that they would give money at all for any kind of repairs is that peeling paint.
That's correct. But if it's built after 1978, like 1980, 85, we just got peeling paint as in just
Right.
weathering, that's not going to be an issue.
Right, exactly. And the reason it's an issue, I don't even think we said why it's an issue.
Only if it's built prior to 1978. Or if the appraiser says it has to be.
Well, lead-based, right?
Yeah, lead-based,
So
that's the key.
So the lead-based paint abatement is the only thing that they would give any kind of money for.
Okay, and that's for HUD, given the money. So we have the bid, and you receive the bid, then you're going to increase the loan amount. What happens with the repairs? When are the repairs done, and who's holding, so we close now, and that escrow is sitting there, who's holding the escrow?
So typically it will go to our escrow department, and we will actually disperse the funds as the repairs are done.
So it doesn't stay with the title company, it stays with you?
Correct.
Okay,
And same on the 203K. Our escrow
Okay.
department would disperse funds based off of draws.
Okay.
So,
Now, the 203B, it's just a regular inspector.
right.
However, if we go to a 203K, the property's been coded UI, uninsurable, but it's still insurable under 203K.
Right.
The appraisers just stated the repairs exceed 10,000.
Right.
And even if someone starts with the 203B with repair escrow, if the repair bids go a little higher, then they can turn over to the 203K.
Sure.
But if out the gate we're doing a 203K, instead of having a regular inspector, what type of inspector should we have?
Sure. So there's under the 203K umbrella, there's
Yeah.
two kinds of 203Ks. So there's the Streamline 203K and there's the full-blown 203K.
Okay.
The Streamline 203K is under 35,000 repairs and doesn't allow for any structural repairs.
The Streamline,
Correct.
under 35.
Right.
Okay.
Side note, I should check to see if it's still 35.
Has it increased or changed, right?
There's the potential that it has gone
Okay.
up.
We'll do a part two.
So the reason, so with the Streamline 203K, you're limited on the dollar amount and you're not doing any structural repairs.
Okay.
As a result, you do not need a HUD inspector.
Okay.
So that saves a couple of bucks there. If you do the full-blown 203K, you're
Not Streamline, full-blown.
full-blown.
That's actually terminology.
Yes.
Okay. We're just not making
the
it up.
full 203K.
The full 203K,
Yes.
okay.
That is when you would need a HUD inspector. So the role of the HUD inspector would be to make sure that the contractor's bid isn't inflated and that the borrower isn't being discriminated against with price gouging,
Okay.
And they would go out and they would say, okay, well, this is how much these repairs can cost. And they would look at two things. They would look at what has to be done per HUD's guidelines to make the property meet HUD's minimum standards.
Okay.
And they would look at what the borrower wants to be done as well. So if they want
So a
repairs
minimal
done-
standard, and then if the buyer wants to add on additional. Like, hey,
Exactly.
while we're in here, let's go ahead and do paint, let's do carpet.
Right.
What about any energy efficient, if they want to swap out the HVAC for a higher SEER and energy efficiency? Is that possible? Is for
Yes,
Going in there?
HUD does have an energy efficient program.
okay.
I've never done one.
Is there special
I have
rebates?
no idea.
I wonder if there's special rebates for that or special incentives for it.
I'm
go
almost
in.
certain there is.
Huh.
We just haven't done
We need to do a three.
it. We do
part
need
three.
to do it 30, yes.
A part three.
Yes.
Now with the HUD inspector, it's a special designation.
Right.
And they actually draw the bids up, so you don't have to go get a contractor.
You would still need a contractor's bid,
Okay.
and the two would need to align.
So you apples to apples.
Apples to apples,
Okay.
exactly. So you're for the same, and the reason they want them to align is because the HUD inspector, his bid for the repairs should be the same as the contractor's bid for the repairs, right?
Okay.
So we want to keep the contractor's bid from being too much, right? There's no reason that his bid should be 150 where the HUD inspector says no, based off everything the price should be around 100.
Okay.
So there's some protections built in for the buyer.
That's smart. That you have someone looking out for the buyer, as in capping the potential cost
Correct.
of these repairs. What about when do the repairs have to be completed, and when does the owner have to take occupancy?
Sure. So the owner has to be able to take occupancy within 60 days. The repairs, however, can take up to 6 months to be completed. The repairs don't start until the deal is closed. So the owner owns the home, and after that is when repairs would start.
And they don't have to occupy immediately.
Right.
And the repairs begin, and they have to be completed when?
Typically it's 6 months.
6 months. What happens if it goes longer? Like we get into it, because sometimes you get into the repairs and you find hidden repairs.
Hidden repairs.
What happens with that?
Hidden repairs are accounted for. So
Okay.
when we do a 203K, depending on a couple of things such as does the house have power, does it have water, is it running, that kind of thing, that will determine what we collect for our contingency reserve.
Okay.
So we're collecting anywhere between 10 to 20% in a contingency reserve for repairs that were unforeseen.
So that's interesting. So you escrow a contingency reserve, and that's still at the closing put into the loan?
Yep.
And what if all that contingency reserve is not used? What happens with that? The loan balance is reduced?
Correct. We do a principal reduction with the amount of the contingency reserve.
Okay. Interesting.
Yep.
Yeah.
Because there's always stuff that
Yeah,
comes
always
up.
is. This is
Always.
repairs,
Right.
We get into these properties. I have found in our current market, a lot of my asset managers are not repairing the properties just because they know they can get top dollar for them. And however, I love to see owner occupants get into these properties and not investors. So I've talked, I'd say just in the recent couple of months, 3 to 5 agents through the 203B and the 203K process on these. And it's been phenomenal. They look like a hero, and their buyers get these properties almost near investors purchase, but then they're able to make the repairs to it.
Right.
And instead of them trying to buy it and make these repairs after closing on your Home Depot or your Lowe's credit card, which is what, 29% interest, which is crazy, you can do it through a regular 203B or 203K.
Just one loan, one monthly payment. You don't have to worry about a first and a second or anything like that.
And the exceptional interest rates right now too.
Exactly.
And you have people looking after you and protecting you. That's what's really important.
Right.
Between your inspector or your HUD inspector and your lender and your agent, and then having these contractors who are licensed and insured, because you're vetting that.
Right.
When you receive the bids, you want to make sure they're D-Port licensed, they have the specialty, they're insured, and bonded as well.
Yep.
To complete the work.
So we get a copy of the license, and then we get 3 references as well, just to make sure.
Oh, you do?
Yep, we get.
What a
references.
great safety guard for the buyer.
Yeah, we try to do as much due diligence as we can. Even though we're not picking the contractor, we still want to try to make sure that we've done everything on our end to make sure that they were a good choice.
Well, yeah, because the loan is based upon the value of the house and the repair.
Yes.
So you want to make sure it's done right and complete.
Correct.
So it's just a great opportunity if you are a homeowner and you're looking at some of these REO properties or bank-owned properties or government-owned properties or anything that's just being sold as is, it doesn't disqualify you to purchase these homes.
Right.
You can go in with 203B escrow or the 203K and actualize these homes basically near investors' cost, but get an amazing product at the end. And I've seen some people go in and really blow it out. Windows, added bathrooms, renovated kitchens, including your roof onto it. So it's really not limited in scope, correct?
Correct. Right. Yeah, and one of the big things that we want to do when we're even considering going down the path of a 203K is let's talk about what we think it's going to cost, right? So we want to make sure of 2 main things. Number 1, that the buyer is going to qualify with the additional cost of the repair, and that they're going to be comfortable with what the estimated monthly payment is.
Okay.
So as long as they've checked those 2 boxes, then we've done everything we're supposed to with, regulating the expectation, because it'll be a new process for these guys for sure.
And that's important. You mentioned what are they qualified for. So if they're going into it, and let's say they're qualified, the max is $200,000. However, they're looking at a property with repair escrows, and let's say they bid $200,000, and then the repair escrows come in at $5,000. So you have to find out, are they approved for $205,000?
Right.
So that has to be done prior, and the best way to do that is call Toby, of course, and say, look, we're looking to potentially put a bid on this property. This is the bid we want to go in, and we're estimating, we don't have repairs yet, escrows, but we're estimating $5,000, and then see if they're approved for that.
Right.
And then the buyer has to be comfortable with the increased mortgage amount as well.
Exactly.
Right. Anything else you want to add? I think it's a phenomenal product out there.
It is a great product. I remember one of the 2 or 3 cases I did that really made me realize just how powerful it was a family that had 6 kids.
6
kids. So this husband and wife had 6 kids, and they were buying their first house. They bought this house.
6 kids, first house.
6 kids.
And going to do a 203.
And doing a 203.
Okay.
203K, yeah. So they bought it for $50,000, and they put $35,000 into it. Okay. And the after improved value on this house was $150,000.
Wow.
Yeah. So when you think of the equity position that
powerful.
203K put them in, it was pretty amazing, and you just love to see a family like that, husband, wife, 6 kids, end up in that position.
That position.
So, yeah.
It's empowering. We know that getting that equity is it can be life-changing, altering for the finance of you and your family, and then just the homeownership, the whole thing about the benefits of homeownership.
Yeah.
That's really fantastic.
Yes.
I wish we could buy houses now for $50,000.
Yeah, me too.
We'd be buying them, right?
Yes.
Right. One thing I do want to hit on
Mm-hmm.
is that people don't understand, most likely 203Bs and 203Ks are not going to close in 30 days.
Correct.
Why is that? Why do we need 45 to 60 day closing time periods?
Yep. So the 203B, the straight 203K, is typically, or sorry, the 203B, the normal FHA loan. Typically, I tell people, let's shoot for 30 days.
That's just straight. We're not doing any repairs.
No
escrows.
repairs, nothing like that. Let's
Cool.
shoot for 30 days. And most of the time we can get it done a little sooner. But what slows it up is when you add people in communication lines to the transaction.
Okay.
So even with the 203B, regular FHA loan with an escrow, now you've added a contractor in there. So now all our figures are going to hinge on his schedule as well, right? So that adds another piece to the puzzle. And then the 203K, you're potentially adding communication between a buyer and a contractor and a HUD inspector and a buyer. So with the added lines of communication,
So we have a big party line going on.
Exactly. It definitely adds to the timeline. And I have never done a 203K where we received the HUD inspector's report back,
Okay.
and the buyer didn't want to change something.
Work order change.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. Which is pretty normal, right? There's typically things they want to add or have done differently, and so it's not that the process has to start over, but the report has to be redone. And so now we're on the HUD inspector's timeline again. So once the report's updated, now the contractor has to update his bid. So it's a little bit of a domino effect when you start tweaking the report once you get it.
And I found also the underwriters, rightfully so, really scrutinize these bids too. And they want to make sure that it encompasses the total scope of what's required for the property. We had one where it would need a new roof, and the contractor submitted the roof bid. However, they didn't say full replacement. They just said, 25 squares, this, so forth. And the underwriter says, I'm not going to approve this.
Right.
I need to know, will this fully satisfy the repair or replacement? And need to say completely replacement of the roof.
Right.
Because we had a roof report that said it was leaking.
Right.
And even though, I'm like, what do you mean? It's 25 squares is enough. She's like, that's not sufficient. It needs to state in there, it's going to be a full replacement, and this will completely take care of the issue with the roof.
Right. 'Cause
Even though we all assume that,
right.
she wouldn't let it go. And it
No.
delayed us for a week or so.
Yeah. Because
Yeah.
these underwriters, they're not contractors.
Yeah.
They don't know.
They don't understand.
They don't understand. So the clearer the communication, the smoother things.
The clearer it is on the bid. Really taking the time. And I love our contractors. They're amazing. But they're contractors. And, sometimes getting behind a computer and writing these bids out very specifically is sometimes a challenge
Yes.
with them. So we help them a lot with making sure they articulate correctly on their bids, getting back to the underwriters.
Right.
Is there anything else you want to share about the FHA $100 down program, which is great on the HUD, the 203B with escrow, and the 203K?
These are all great products for just about every buyer. They're not just for first-time home buyers, especially the 203B and the 203K.
Okay.
So anybody thinking of doing repairs should definitely at least take a look at them. They are for primary residents only, so they do have to be living in the house, but it's not limited to first-time home buyers.
That's interesting. And what about your credit scores, your entries on your credit scores?
Credit scores post-COVID have gone back down to I believe 640 for the 203K.
And the same for 203B escrow?
Yes.
Okay.
Actually, 203B with escrow, I believe, is down to 620.
620. All right. Well, if you have any further questions, definitely reach out to Toby. And what's your telephone number, Toby? Because they can blow you up, right?
Yes.
Text and call.
Absolutely. 757-729-5959.
And how can they reach you via email?
TOBY3@movement.com.
All right, fantastic. Thanks, Toby. Great information. I hope it helped everyone. Definitely get out there and start talking about the 203Bs with escrows and the 203Ks. Make it a great day, guys.